Welcome to another 2D to 3D conversion video. Well, actually, this is the first 2D to 3D conversion video, and this is inspired by an art from a guy at ArtStation who created and granted me privilege of using this 2D concept for the conversion purposes. So I'll be going over my process of how I created the 3D model from this 2D image in a little bit of a detail. So as you can see, I started with a couple of spheres, actually subdivided cubes, and a new means I learned to simplify the process of 3D modeling in any software really, especially Blender. Now that we have a lot of tools to allow it, is using separate meshes for as long as possible. In this case, you can see I have separated the mesh into an upper head, a lower head, and a neck, as well as the ears. And it will remain this way for quite a while until I can get a pretty good representation of the original drawing. This way I can focus on areas without having to bother about other areas that aren't working or have been completed. So at the earlier stage, focus is on just moving the meshes around to get the details I need with as low detail, as low resolution as possible. Now, you'll always be told that working with low resolution meshes is always good for as long as you can, because it's easier to manipulate, it's easier to correct, it's easier to work with. So now I'm working on the nose, which again, another subdivided box. I try to get the shape and proportions right as quickly as I can, but without going too quickly, without going into too much detail. And again, because I'm working on just the nose, I have only the nose to contend with. The rest of the head stays in place for as long as possible without much issue, and it gives me opportunity to jump back and forth from the nose to the cheek, to the forehead, to the ears, to the neck, on and on. At this point you can see the mesh is beginning to get a pretty good representation of the original drawing, but it's still very low res. It's still easy to work with. And I move on to the neck, always remembering at this stage I'm still working with symmetry to simplify the process. In this particular mesh, I have the opportunity or the luxury to work with symmetry for as long as possible, because to a large degree the face is, it's just the face. There's not much posing done, and so I can keep it that way up till 80% of the work is done. And then the moment I start to need more resolution, I can either combine parts that I feel need to start working together, and then add extra geometry using whatever tool. In this case, I'm using the Blender's Remesh tool to add more geometry as I need to. And the moment I get more geometry, I start putting the details that I need. So now I am blocking the entire face. At this stage, the nose and the ears are still separate from the rest of the head. And then working still with the head, I start to put more detail that I can. So I'm on the point where I'm on the jaws, and I'm putting the details for the jaws, the cheek, the eyes, the brow area. continue the blocking out process by going through the entire model. Remember to look through the model from different angles, because something might look good at an angle but be out of proportion from every other angle. So at this point you can see me just going into a little bit of detail on the face. As soon as I start hitting a roadblock anywhere, I move to other parts of the skull. And when I feel I've made enough progress for the level of detail, and then move to another place, block out any other area. Like in this case, I want to block out parts of the torso. Give me a good reference of where I'm going as opposed to where I currently am. Remembering to take into consideration proportion, because that's the biggest factor in getting your model to look like the initial concept. As soon as I feel it's necessary, I join the parts that need to be joined so that I can proceed with the work. At this point you can see me alternating between the move brush, the draw brush, and in certain cases other unique brushes to achieve other unique purposes, like the crease brush that I use to sharpen certain edges of my sculpt. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you find it useful. You know, people who might, it helps the channel a lot. And so right after blocking the body, I move on to blocking the regions of the eye. Now it might seem easier to just grab a standard brush and sculpt out these details. But as I've said, I find it much more controllable to just use new geometry to block out areas, regions, that have unique shape. That way I have better control of how I model and shape those areas. I can get them looking exactly the way I want, much quicker, much easier, without distorting work that has been done on other parts of the model. So right now you've seen me just block out areas of the eye sac and merge it with parts of the face, and as soon as I'm done I can just keep refining and refining, because I push it to the point I wanted it to be before I moved on to other areas. Noting that at this stage I can still use the move brush a lot more than any other brush, blocking out areas as I want, correcting other areas, creasing areas like the cheek, then moving between areas, mouth region, cheek, jawline, nose, the eye region. As soon as I need more detail, I just remesh the mesh with more resolution, and just enough resolution so that, again, I don't ever want to be working with more polygons than I have to, because it's always easier. It's always easier to work with the least amount of geometry or polygons that I need at every given point. Right now I am back to the eyes, increasing it and make sure it looks close enough to what I'm seeing. And if I feel I need correction in any way, I just push vertices, so a little change makes a lot of difference. You see, with each brush stroke, each movement, my model, my sculpt is looking more and more like what I intended to look like. So once I feel that I can merge the different meshes together, I go ahead and control. If I need more geometry, I change the resolution of the mesh. I think it's about time. I merge the nose and the ears with the other parts of the face, and continue refining, smoothing out areas where the merger took place, so that it doesn't look like a welded piece of work. And you can see the moment I make changes in certain areas, it informs my decision in other areas, because I can see where my proportions are wrong, or where my shapes are not right, where I need to do much more refinement, where I need just little refinement, and where I might need to come back to. The moment I get to a reasonable location, a reasonable level, I can start adding new detail, like in this case the moustache. I can shape the moustache. You'll find out quickly that just simple accessories like this get you much closer to the end result. Now I could, at this point, use the snake hook brush to just push out the moustache quickly, but I would rather work with uniform geometry that I know that I can control. I'm just not much of a fan of the dynamic topology tool that gives me its own details when it creates its own level of details. I'd rather just add more geometry when I need. Next up, the beard. Just like the mustache, I continue to define the mesh by adding what I'll call the accessories. These are actually cheap ways to get the mesh to look like the original concept. By pushing the vex around softly, slowly, using the move brush, standard brush, and pinch brushes. Of course, I try not to be afraid when moving around the meshes. I can easily correct any mistakes that I've made at any point in time. Again, subtle movements get me closer to where I intend to be. And I'll go to the side hair. In this particular mesh, I decided to take it in smaller bits. I'm still working with symmetry, so side hair is taken as one piece. Of course, it's hard to see the other part from this part, so up till now I can use symmetry and forget about it being obvious that it's symmetrical. At a point it becomes harder to know what mesh belongs to where, so it's good practice to name the meshes properly. So after the side hair, I move on to the front hair, and straight away with this one, I choose not to work with symmetry. I actually can't afford to in this case. And this was one of the areas I encountered a little bit of difficulty because I'm still not as good as I'd like to be dealing with hair. But as with everything, requires practice. Looking back at it, I see areas where I could have done much better job, but I'm pretty certain when given an opportunity like this next time I'll do a much better job. From the hair I move to the eyebrows. At this point I have formed the habit of naming my meshes appropriately. I scale it, move it to the particular location, and I always remember to try and apply transforms, because if that doesn't happen, it can skew the way the mesh deforms while sculpting. So all transforms are applied before I move over to the sculpt part of the mesh: rotation, scale, and position. And just as I did with the beards and the mustache, I'm pushing around parts of the eyebrows and remeshing as I go. Again, I could use the snake hook brush, but I find that standard move brush is pretty okay while working in this state. From here on out, adding subtle details, various meshes. the hair, the mustache, the beard. I'm taking the liberty of just giving it my own definition, as some parts of the drawing are not visible to me, so I can actually infer what I expect should be contained within those locations. It's part of the sculpt process, typically referred to as detailing the secondary form. The primary form basically what gives it its silhouette. Secondary details are those extra details that, like the extra bumps on the skin, or in this case, what makes hair feel like hair. Well, this is a more cartoon-like stylized character, so I'm not exactly trying to make the hair look like real hair, although that wouldn't be a bad idea. I'm making sure that the names of my meshes give me a good description of what they are, so that I can always quickly pick them out. I also make sure that the hair, again, I'm giving it definition that I can't see, but I'm inferring from what I see with people that have this general hair structure, face structure. You can assume this a middle-aged man, tall and fit. So you can see to some degree, with the front of the hair, that he isn't exactly bald, but could easily be bald. I'm adding that extra clump of hair at the back, refining it the way I can best define it, using my own imagination. And that's the good thing about art. Even though I'm working with a concept, I can add my own ideas to the finished product. Of course, in this case, I won't be rendering the back, but I still have to work as if, to some degree, that would be expected to be seen. And here I was having a little bit of problem trying to define the wrinkles on the forehead. So I think in the end I managed to get something close to what I'm looking at. Some artists will emphasize things about anatomy, and yes, it is good, because with the anatomy you can kind of understand the flow of things, especially when they are covered or obscured by other parts of the mesh, are not visible for whatever reason. So for instance, I know that the lower lip should be just slightly above the tip of the beard, and then from there on I go to making the clothes, which for this model I consider the most boring part, so I frankly didn't have much fun doing this and won't bore you by going through the entire processes, but I'm going to just show how I made the inner shirt, and from there I'll show the final render of the image. So that's it, folks. This was the process of creating a base model. This is the result after fully painting, a little bit of shading. The output is side-by-side comparison to the original artwork. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and see you again in the next video.